to all of you. I can't see all of you on my screen, unfortunately, because I can only see about 12 of you, but I'm sure, and I've seen loads of people here, so you're very, very welcome to our first general meeting of the Community Land Trust, the Middle Marches Community Land Trust. My name's Oliver Good. I'm from Norbury, and I'm one of the interim board members of the Trust, and I'm going to be shepherding you through our agenda. And the first thing I'd like to do is say that because we're on Zoom, we're going to introduce all the people who are going to be speaking at the start, so that you know who they are, and you can keep them focused. So without more ado, I'll just introduce the team. First, Jonathan Brown. Wave your hand, Jonathan, and tell everyone a little bit about yourself.
Hello, my name's Jonathan. I'm one of the founder interim board of the Middle Marches, and basically this whole thing partly stemmed from a report that Richard Keemer and I wrote for the National Trust about 3 years ago. So I'm just very pleased that we've got to this key milestone in our story. I'm really pleased it's happening.
Brilliant, thank you. And Rob Rowe. Rob.
Hi everybody. Yeah, I'm a local ecologist, I guess, and I'm a member of the small initial group. I've lived in this area for about 40 years, and I'm just amazed what's happened in the last 2.5 years.
Yeah,
fantastic. Looking forward to
it. Lizzie Hilton Harrop.
Hi, yes, I can wave, yes. Yeah, one of the founding members of the Trust, and been most involved with the website and some of the communications, and still helping out in that area now, although I'm not on the interim board anymore.
And finally, Richard Keemer.
Hi, yeah, I moved across here, retired about 10 years ago. Spent a career working in nature conservation, and wanted to get involved and do some interesting things when I came across here. I'm also on the interim board.
There's one other member of the interim board who would be here, but unfortunately he has had to retire to bed with some very strange, hopefully not COVID symptoms. And that's Tim, who would normally be doing some presentations today, but alas, we have to work without him. So let's get well wishes go to him. Now, one of the facts about working on Zoom is that we need to make sure that everybody is on mute. And the reason for that is that we have a problem with background noise if we don't, and we hear sort of telephone calls and all sorts of things going on. So can you check that you are on mute for the proceedings, so that we can sort of go straight through? After that, how are we going to run the meeting? You should have got your agenda and papers this morning from Lizzie. And if you haven't, perhaps you could put your hand up, and Lizzie could maybe, Steve, you haven't got, what have you not got, Steve? Right.
I haven't got anything other than the 2 things that were in the email that was sent this morning. So I've got the annual review and the first set of accounts, but I've not received anything else.
Okay, so
that's exactly the same as my situation as well, Oliver. I don't have an agenda, and I've received what Steve has as well.
All right. So Lizzie, you could help us with this. We've got the agenda up on the screen now. Very straightforward. So basically, the 2 papers that we're going to be discussing are the annual review and the accounts, and those are items 4 and 5 on the agenda. And the item 6, the election of the board, all the people who've put their names forward have been put onto the website, and you should have been able to have a chance to read those. Okay. As we go through the agenda, we will pause at the key points, the annual review, at the end of the annual review process and the end of the counts process and during the election of the board, to ensure that you have a chance to ask questions of the presenter after the presentation is complete. If you want to ask a question, please first post it on the chat function on your machine, and Lizzie will be moderating these chats, and provided there aren't many questions, she will invite you individually to unmute, ask your question at the appropriate time. You'll be unmuted during the answering of your question, and then if you could mute again after the question has been answered. Okay, so I'll just go over that again. If you have a question on one of those three items, the annual review, the presentation account, or the election of the board, post your question on the chat. Lizzie will moderate the chat, and she will invite you to unmute, answer your question at the most appropriate time. Okay? So I'm on to the item on the annual review. The first point about this, we thought it would help to have different board members covering sections of the review so that you would have different voices and that it would ease the proceedings through. So as we go through, I will introduce each one as we go through the report. First, I suppose I hope that you enjoyed reading it. It's a long report, and a lot has been covered in the short time since we launched Norbury Village Hall in March 2019. After all the excitement and energy of that night, the interim board began to shape a programme that reflected the range of opinions in the room, and
Oh dear. Oliver, can you hear me? He's not on mute. Okay, we seem to have just lost Oliver.
Trying to make sense of all the different views and interests that were represented on the night was quite a complex issue. And so the review tells some of that story about the ups and downs and some of the surprises that we've had along the way. And so what I'm going to do now is hand us over to Richard, who will tell us about the Cudwell Meadow, the first of our purchases in these 2 years. Over to you, Richard.
Thanks, Oliver. Well, we've been working with the Stretton Wetlands Interest Group at Church Stretton for a year or so to help them purchase this 3-acre meadow on the edge of Stretton Wetlands as a nature reserve. The appeal that we ran with them raised £25,000, mainly from local people, and the legalities of the purchase were completed just after Christmas. I think particular thanks are due to Lizzie Holton Harrop for dealing with the intricacies of the website to facilitate much of the work of the appeal. There is now quite a lot of work to do to put in place a traditional management regime for cutting the hay and the aftermath grazing. And for example, we have a grant from Natural England, both to assist with the purchase of the site and to get some tools for management. So we're really just at the point of needing to get to work and look at spending that money and moving towards putting the management in place. So that's where we're about with Cudwell Meadow. It's been an exciting ride. It's gone very well working with the SWIG, the Stretton Wetlands Interest Group, and we're looking forward to this new year getting going with the management of the site.
Well, thanks very much, Richard. Now we're going to ask Rob to tell us something about the land that we manage with the Lindley Estate at the Nind, and later the purchase of land at Norbury Hill. Rob, over to you. Rob, can we hear you?
Right, start again. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
This is a 10-acre area of land which is divided by the English-Welsh border, just on the A488, 5 miles north of Bishop's Castle. It belongs to the Lindley Estate, and for the last 20 years it's had no management other than the thinning of the riverside alders 5 years ago. So in essence it's had 20 years of rewilding. This is shown quite well on the Google photos between 1998 and 2020. And it's got the grassland has become very tussocky, although quite a large number of the herb species still remain. And a brief survey in this last year indicated over 100 plant species, of which there are many good indicator species. As you can see in the photo, there's quite a lot of scrub encroachment, blackthorn and bracken, and also rose bay willow herb, and some hazel and some oak. And there's other small unusual habitats with tussock sedge and pond sedge and water horsetail. So a basic botanical survey has already been done, and the plan would be to build on this to determine the vegetation types and note the change over time. And also to encourage other disciplines to survey insects, fungi, etc., to build a better picture, a broader picture. The basic plan is to install a fence around the 3 fields, but leaving a wide margin to allow a thick hedge, scrubby boundary. And these fields will then be lightly grazed around August, September using James Evans cattle. That's the farmer on the estate. And the wooded area either side of the river would have the stock excluded. There is access, as you can, if you look on the map, there's a line across. There is actually a public footpath that goes across it at the moment. And we have a 7-year agreement with the estate, which is all ready to sign. So that's Nind Meadows. So go on to Norbury. So Norbury Hill, situated a mile north of the Norbury village in southwest Shropshire, for people that don't know it. Of the 94 acres that were for sale, we're buying the northern half. And you can see that on the little map there, the dividing line in black. That will cost us £100,000 plus 2,500 for the entitlements, which will enable us to claim the basic farm payment. So we're borrowing £80,000 on a 20-year interest-free loan from a supporter, Keith Evans, who lives in Church Stretton. Hatcher's solicitors in Shrewsbury acting on our behalf. And that is in process at the moment. One of our key aims is acquiring valuable wildlife sites. Norbury Hill has been described as the largest stepping stone between important sites of conservation, the Long Mynd and the Stiperstones. It's an upland site. It's 1,000 feet in the valley bottom, and it goes up to about 13,000 at the top. And it's part of a large Shropshire Wildlife Trust designated local wildlife site, mainly due to the small pearl-bordered fritillary and a good diverse plant population. It divides east-west between an open hilltop of grassland and bracken. And the bracken bank with southwesterly aspect goes down to a stream and is divided again by 2 small valleys. You can just about see that in the picture. While some of the grassland top is semi-improved with ryegrass and clover, it was ploughed and drained in the 1960s, there are still areas of the old heathy grassland with harebell and heathbred straw, wet, rushy areas. There's a bridleway and public footpath which runs along the eastern boundary. At this time of year, we plan to do plant, bird and invertebrate surveys this year, not only of our area, but also our partner and the adjoining farmland to the north and the south, and from that develop a management plan. We should have an annual income when set up from the basic farm payments, letting the grazing, and following up land management grants such as stewardship grants working with Natural England, as it's not actually currently in one of those schemes. Thank you.
Rob, thank you very much indeed. Now, we're not just interested in land purchase and land management. Lizzie is going to cover the exciting development of Marches Grow Local, a new project, and probably, to coin a phrase, the name is on the tin. So Lizzie, over to you.
Thanks very much. And sorry to step on your introduction, but there are a couple of questions in the chat about land. So I thought if we could cover those before moving on, that might be quite helpful. So there are a couple of questions from iPad 9 about Cudwell Meadow. So I think that's William. Would you be able to unmute yourself, William, and would you like to ask your question about Cudwell Meadow?
Right. I'm sorry. It says iPad 9. It is me, William Takon. Two questions, one of which had been answered privately by Jonathan. One was, who is the legal owner of Cudwell Meadow? And he's answered me. It's MMCLT, which is fine. My follow-on question was, reference has been made to a grant, but what is the financial position of the meadow, and is that grant going to be sufficient to create self-sustainability financially for that project?
Well, we raised, the appeal raised 25,000. The purchase price was 19,000. So there's going to be, and the grant from Natural England was pretty small, so only quite a small proportion of it. So there's enough there, I think, basically in the reserve fund for going forwards that will allow the basic management of the site to be carried out for a year or two, I would think. The more it isn't, I don't think it's so much a question of finance there. It's a very small site after all. It's more a question of what sort of local contacts and arrangements can the management group for the site, Cudwell Meadow Management Team, they can enter into with neighbouring farmers or other people with stock and so on, who might want to cut the hay, take it away, and then put a few animals on to graze it. Obviously, it doesn't need very many. It's only 3 acres, so it depends. I mean, obviously, there's some hay to offer, and we'd like some grazing, and we've also had some discussion with the Middle Marches group, Meadow Group, of which Richard Small, who's on the call, is secretary. So we feel is out, but I think financially the situation, it doesn't look too bad at all, I would say.
Have any calculations actually taken place though? It's all very well saying it doesn't look too bad actually, but have you actually done any calculations of what, bearing in mind we're going to own this forever?
We have done some, yes, we have done some, and of course we've seen how the meadow was actually managed this year as well, when it is last year when it was actually cut. But that's not to say that, as we'll say with some of the other sites, one of the jobs we've got this coming year is firstly on all the sites is really to assess their condition and move to draw up management plans and then cost those properly. But as with all the sites, we're in very early days at the moment.
So we've got a question from Steve about NIND. Steve, could you unmute yourself and ask your question, please?
Yeah, I mean, it's really the same question for the NIND project. Is it expected that it will generate any income, and what outgoings are expected, both in the short term but on an ongoing basis?
Yeah, Steve, we do need to raise some money to do the fencing. We either need to raise some money, about £5,000, or we in some way need to do some work to help Linley Estate to look at the generally other advisory work perhaps across the estate as payment in lieu. So that's apart from that, there should not be many outgoings on that place.
And will there be any income?
No, I doubt it.
Okay.
And there's a question from Simon Cooter on the ownership of the hill. Simon, do you want to come in there?
Oh yeah, it was Rob. You mentioned we bought the north end and the north half. Who's bought the south half?
Okay, the person that's bought the other half does not wish to be named till the sale has gone through.
Right, fair enough.
Oh, and when's that expected to be?
Well, it's with the solicitors, so.
Well, okay, well, let me ask a different question. Is there any hold up, and if so, what is it?
They're just going through the searches at the moment, so that's as far as I know.
And is there an expected completion date?
Optimistically, I think I'd say the end of February.
Okay.
Simon,
Yep.
Did you have a question, Jonathan, or anything else to add?
I was just going to say that I'm in the middle of another purchase for the Bishop's Castle Land Trust, and the whole legal system is totally overburdened at the moment. The local authority is weeks behind with its searches, and one of the many unfortunate consequences of deaths from COVID is that all solicitors are inundated with resolving estates, handling property sales. So I don't think any solicitor at the moment will give any dates, because I know the one I'm dealing with won't give me a date. So we can't tell yet how long the Norbury Hill sale will take to go through.
Okay, I understand that. I've never really thought of that, but that's understandable.
Okay, great. Now I'll move on and talk about March of Grow Local.
Lizzie, sorry. I asked a question about what financial calculations have been done for Norbury Hill, and I'm sure I posted that chat.
Yeah, sorry. That's the final one that's been posted. Rob, do you want to come back on that?
Apart from having looked at what the income had been in the past, and talking to Natural England about the possibilities of payments that we can get, yeah, it's a bit like it is okay, William. It's a bit like the back of a fag packet so far. So yes, that's what you put in your email. We have done some, but at the moment it's early days.
It's all a bit vague, Rob, isn't it? Really.
Can I come in there, please?
Thank you.
Yeah, by all means.
One of the reasons why we haven't done a cash flow is that I don't think there's much point in putting theoretical figures into a cash flow that might end up being totally unrealistic. Because of the huge upheaval in farm payments, we don't think that the Elms is going to be clear until maybe 2024. So I think we would rather, it's not that we're being amateur, it's just that we think that we ought to progress with some figures, which I know we should do, when we're a bit nearer clarity. And I think any landowner who's under the current financial arrangements from the government would say the same, that you can't really predict the future right now. It could take another 18 months at least before we have some knowledge about the income from the hill.
Jonathan, are you saying that even the next 12 months from what grant support will be available, is not known? Never mind 5 years out.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I don't see any point in creating a cash flow for the next 10, 20 years of the loan until we have got some sensible figures to put into it.
But I'm not saying 20 years. I understand the point entirely about 20 years, but what about 1 year or 2 years, or indeed to 2024?
Well, I suggest we wait till the sale's completed and then we've got this year to sort that out.
There is no, the new schemes, there are no published rates. Well, in fact, the new schemes haven't been published yet, and there are no published pay rates for the new schemes either. So until that information is, it's difficult to know how to proceed with that regard.
So okay, so
That's the
on
landowner,
so we're totally flying blind. The reality of it is, from what I've heard, that we are completely flying blind
No,
on the financials for the hill.
that's not what we've said. What we've said is we've looked at the cash flow situation, the income that we've earned that the landowner has had there from Natural England over the past 2 or 3 years, and we've looked at the income that has been from grazing management as well. So we've got those figures, but that scheme has ended, and the new schemes will start. So we have basic information on certain amounts of money that we will receive, but what we don't know is the likely income from 2022 onwards, and that's the difficulty we've got.
Could I bring in Sarah as well at this point? She would just like to comment on the discussion. Sarah, would you like to unmute?
Hi, yes, I was just going to say that I've had a little bit of involvement in this, and as far as I understand it, that entitlements are being acquired with the land, so therefore there will be entitlement income this year if we do the claim by May the 15th. I don't think it's 100% in England now this year, and as a new purchaser it might have some cutback, but there should be entitlement income. And I also understand that there is a tenant or a local farmer who is also willing to graze it or continue grazing it, and so there should be rental income. So I think just at the very outset, there is some income coming in which will allow you to match your expenditure against that.
Well, that's sort of reassuring. It's all a bit, believe me, it's going to be all right on the night, though, with respect. I appreciate the comments that are made. And I also had understood from a previous exchange that there was cost involved in things like fencing and separating the land and doing all sorts of things to do it, to change its status and improve it. What is the estimated cost of that, and how's that going to be financed?
We've just to answer that question, we've retained a certain sum of money, around about £20,000, to allow us to fulfil all those requirements should they be necessary, and that money will take us through to complete those that work to prepare the land for its future management.
But it has to be said that there isn't a great deal of work required at these initial stages. There will be a cost in dividing the land. I wouldn't have thought it would be that great, but beyond that, I don't think there aren't many expenses that we would want or need to undertake in the first year or two.
Okay.
Okay, Lizzie, are there any other questions? And if not, shall we go on to Marches Grow Local?
Yeah, I'll talk briefly about. Sorry, Steve, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I did. I did post another question. I'm sort of with William on this. I'm rather concerned about what I'm hearing, because on the one hand, you seem to be saying that you're not in a position yet to come up with a financial plan for going forward, not just for the hill, but for all the aspects that we're taking on. But at the same time, you're saying, don't worry, we've done all the necessary sort of packet calculations and it's all going to be fine. But you don't seem willing to share that initial financial cost and benefit analysis with us. So we've got no idea on what basis you're making these claims. And given that this organisation is a community land trust, two key words there, community and trust. If you want this thing to go forward with everyone on board, you need to make sure that you have all our trust. So I don't really understand why you seem to be reluctant to share, even if it's only provisional information, about the financial state of the organisation and how you're going to achieve the things you want to achieve.
I think that summarises my views. It's all very well for the senior people to be tapping their nose and say, believers chaps, it's all going to be all right on the night. But I personally would like to see a lot more transparency about what's going on. I don't mean every day or every week, but not one number, I think, has been mentioned apart from possibly 20,000 mentioned by Oliver. And I think it was Rob saying, no, it's not going to be 20,000. We've had nothing is the answer to it. It's all, as Steve is suggesting, on the basis of it's going to be okay, chaps, believers.
Jonathan, do you want to answer that? Because I think that your financial report will cover those concerns, I think.
I don't think so. I think that I would agree up to the point that given the volume of work that we as all volunteers have been doing, what has slipped down the agenda is putting on record to our members how we've got the estimated costs, because I think there's been quite a few conversations. We talked with Sarah or with the steering group. So I would agree to the extent that we're overdue now that we've got legally acquired Cudwell. We're about to sign the agreement for Nind, and Norbury is going towards completion. I agree that this is the time to firm up on the discussions that we've had. But at the same time, I would stress that the two gentlemen are looking at a glass half empty. If we hadn't started it and put hundreds of hours of volunteer time in, we wouldn't have these assets coming under our control for nature. So I think, we are doing this within our own time and to the limits of our expertise. So I would like, given that this is the first general meeting, to be cut a little slack by the people who are saying there's no trust or transparency. What do you think this meeting is about?
Well, okay, fine.
You still haven't shared the information with us.
I just told you where it's up.
Sorry, you haven't.
Can I just say to you, we've only just completed one purchase. As soon as we've got this meeting out of the way, that's the next thing on our agenda. You've already told us we haven't shared it. I can't share it now by pulling a rabbit out of a hat, can I?
Could I also just, we've got Andrew who would like to comment. So could I ask you to unmute Andrew and contribute to the discussion?
Good evening, everyone. I think there's a great danger in the conversation so far that two sides of the conversation are talking past each other. And I think they're both being pretty reasonable. So I think the challenge to the interim board is your shareholders would like to see some business planning. I think the response from the interim board is we're getting there, but we haven't got there yet. And that's to do with the state of play with the purchases, and it's to do with the information that's available. So in response to Jonathan's plea to be cut a little slack, I'd be prepared to cut you a little slack. But if we were rerunning the conversation at the next AGM and appreciating that this is the first, then I think I'd want to take my £10 away and anything else that I might choose to invest subsequently. There's a real risk. So I say this partly as a former finance director in government and partly as a charity trustee of too many years standing. I think there's a real danger that we hurry people into making commitments or plans that won't stand any reasonable test, but equally that we don't have plans in place soon enough to meet any challenge that could come from those who might regulate us. So I don't know what it is, my suggestion is let's ask for some business planning for a year's time, and let's be robust and challenge that when we can see it.
And Andrew, I would entirely echo all your comments, which I think are perfectly fair and reasonable. But I would also say the only area I would disagree with you is business plans need to be prepared, in my opinion, much sooner than 12 months' time.
Well, I would agree with that, but I think in terms of the formalities of this, I think seeing the whole package together at an AGM in a year's time is a reasonable ask. But I also think that once we have a formal board in place, then we could quite reasonably press them to make progress on that front more quickly.
That's perfectly fair. I personally think we should be trying to set some timetables for this, and I also would seek confirmation from the interim or the final board that information will be shared with the members, so at least they can see what is going on. And that's not about micromanaging, say, oh, there's a 20 quid provision here or whatever it may be. Not interested in that. But the big picture, that these things on a sustainable, reasonable assumptions have been made, and that these things are, in fact, financially sustainable, and preferably generating some surpluses which can be reinvested elsewhere and used for any loan repayments which are required.
I think
well, perhaps we can leave that ask with trustees and give them a chance to respond to it.
Thank you, Andrew. That's very helpful.
What's your response, Oliver?
My response is that that is a perfectly reasonable request, and I'm hoping that the board, once it's elected, would see that as an essential prerequisite of the next 12 months. Sharing much more information, involving members much more in the process of planning and delivering work, and accessing people's skills to enable them to do that.
Okay.
Okay, any more questions on the issue of land purchase or financial planning? Brilliant. Right. Let's now go on, finally, to Marches Grow Local. Lizzie, do you want to take us through this?
Yeah, sure. So for the last about 12 months now, I've been working with a small group of people that sit under the Middle Marches Community Land Trust, and we're interested in looking at how we could possibly strengthen a local food network. So we're very interested in looking at it both from the perspective of local producers, but also from a customer perspective. So we started out, yeah, as I said, about 12 months ago, we were very inspired by the project in Devon called Tamar Grow Local. And we ran a webinar with Simon Platten, who showed us they've been running for just over 10 years. And he explained in great detail about how their model worked. And we were wondering whether we could set up something similar in Shropshire. So we started out with a survey to which we received about 350 responses. Just really finding out what the appetite is locally for buying more local food and supporting more local producers. So we have been mapping and engaging with people who are producing food locally, but it's also a key consideration of ours that it's not only about looking at the local, it's about looking at food that is produced sustainably. It's about supporting farmers and who are working with organic produce or high welfare. That's all very much something that we're interested in. And then from the customer point of view, we're also looking at trying to make it easier and more accessible for more people to be buying locally produced, sustainably produced food. So we're looking at a piece of software called the Open Food Network, which is also used by Tamar Grow Local. And our objective with that really is if we could get a group of producers together that would be interested in listing any additional produce they have online, then it would make it much easier for the customer to then go on, be able to buy locally produced food from a range of people in one place, place. That was one of the barriers that we heard about in the survey, was people don't really do it because you have to go to multiple places and it's just more difficult and more time consuming. So if we can make that as easy as possible for the customer, and then either deliver that through a click and collect system or through potentially a delivery service later on. We're also very interested in the educational side of things and raising awareness locally about why it's important to shorten supply chains and support local producers. But we're in very early days as well, so just trying to do as much research as possible. We're very conscious that we want to support what's already happening locally. We don't want to step on toes. We don't want to create competition. We want to hear from local people and local producers about what is working well for them and where any gaps are and how we could support them. So that's where it's at so far. And yeah, hope to be able to feed back a lot more in a few months.
Thanks, Lizzie. Have you spotted any questions on that? No?
So there's a comment from Janet about a local food strategy in Bishop's Castle. So we're aware of other projects going on and we're trying to set up conversations. We're in conversations with the food bank as well and the Shropshire Food Poverty Alliance. So trying to make people aware of what we're doing and how we can support other projects going on. So yeah, thanks very much for that comment, Janet, about that.
A really exciting initiative, and interestingly that Linley Hall are interested in using their garden to support that work. Now, we're moving on to network and training events. They really took off before COVID struck. They've now moved online, and Jonathan will tell us a bit more about that.
You're muted, Jonathan.
Yeah, sorry about that. Okay. Well, obviously, this section of our work is what suffered the most from COVID, because I think it is these events where people are brought together, which are some of the most sort of productive and exciting elements of Middle Marches. Kicking off with the farm walk at Partridge Farm with James Evans, and you can see a picture of that gathering on the left. And we've had talks like in sustainable woodland management with Richard Craven, and we've had talks on digital mapping with Lizzie. I suppose really all I would flag up is that this is something that we can't wait to restart when circumstances permit, because it is the thing to me that brings Middle Marches alive and involves people's enthusiasms and results in a lot of cross-fertilisation of ideas. So that's all I need to say about that, really. It's something we want to start as soon as we can.
Thanks, Jonathan. Going on then, at the final bit of this sort of section is the information hub, which Lizzie's set up on our website. Do you want to tell us a bit more about that, Lizzie?
Yeah, so this has been something that we started pretty early on because we were interested in connecting other local projects that are happening and providing somewhere where we could share information. So it was going very well before COVID. We had a very active event hub, but obviously things have had to change slightly. We have tried to adapt as best we can. So we have a webinar page now where we're sharing links to organisations that have been running or are running into the future webinar series. So these cover a number of farming organisations, also environmental and conservation organisations. So have a look at that in case you haven't already. And then we have the green pages as well. We'd love to get some more people on here. So this is about promoting people with skills locally that can help out. So we've got Rob and Tim from the interim board there on there. So if you know anyone that would be suitable for this area of the website, please do get in touch and we'd be happy to add them. And then we started a video tutorials page last year. So Rob and I worked on this just as restrictions were easing into the spring and summer of last year. So we did a couple of verge walks and meadow walks because so many of the events have been cancelled. So these are just kind of very simple introductions to species that are in the verges and in meadows. So it goes through the video of some of Rob's commentary and then also images with the name of the flower that we were talking about. So it's a really good way of kind of picking up on all of that. I definitely learned a lot from that. So it's and just a nice way to be able to share things with people when we couldn't actually get out and see people face to face. So maybe we might look at doing some more of those this year. But yeah, if you have any ideas, it is really it's kind of a community space on the website. So if you know of anything you think could be interest to members and to the wider community, then please do let us know and we'll get it up there. So thanks very much.
Thanks, Lizzie. That's I think that hub is a really exciting development, and we hope to grow that very much in the coming year.
Sorry, one I just seen in the green pages. So someone who joined now has 12 months extra work. So that's great.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, please do spread the word. We'd love to get some more people on there.
I mean, I think it's worth saying at this point that Lizzie has absolutely worked her guts out to get our website to the level that it really is. She's done a fantastic job over the last couple of years, actually enabling that to happen. And we owe her a huge debt of gratitude, all of us do. She's done a great job, really fantastic.
Thank you.
Moving on, what have we learnt from all this activity across the area? All the land purchases and management, the partnership development, the communication. I think there are 4 things that really sort of spring out at you. The first is the absolutely extraordinary level of support that we've received from you all over the last 2 years. Absolutely extraordinary. We've had so many good ideas coming from members. You've responded to all our questionnaires that have come out. 300 of you, as you've heard, responded to the questionnaire that eventually led to Marches Grow Local. There have been so many people who have come to events either on farm or online or virtually. Absolutely amazing. And then finally, of course, we have been absolutely overwhelmed by the responses to our fundraising efforts. We are so grateful to everybody for all that huge support that we received. And I can't thank you enough. It's bolstered us when we felt defeated. It's helped us to achieve things that we thought were simply not possible. It's helped us to design new projects, shape new ideas. Thank you. Thank you so much for the support that we've received. And so what do we do as a result of that? What do we do now? First of all, we need, I think, to work really hard to find out your ideas and preferences for the future. Because all the ideas and initiatives that have come through this last couple of years have emerged from ideas that emerged from you. So that's the first thing. We need to keep asking the questions and find out more about what members and others want us to do. Secondly, we need to make sure, as the questions about land purchase have identified, we need to make sure that our communications and our messaging and our decisions are clear, consistent and logical. And that strikes me as being a really important thing. We haven't done nearly enough to communicate and to involve you, the members, in the decisions that we make. And that is something that we're going to be looking at once we have a new board. And that will emerge, I'm sure, from the business planning that we do. Finally, I think in this section, I think we need to think about how we create structures as an organisation that involve you, the members, much more in the work that you're interested in. And we need to think about governance structures that actually involve you much more in that process. So that's where I I think we need to go as far as the support is concerned. Secondly, we've heard how much that you've enjoyed and involved yourselves in the training and networking activities, meeting new people online and in person. And we've found them really useful too, as a way of spreading our agenda and linking it to the wider agenda of groups locally and organizations locally and those individuals who are sort of part of that. Really, really crucial. So what do we need to do about this? I think that we're working really hard now to revive these activities, think about how they might work better online and eventually in the real world, and expand their reach by working in partnership. And partnership is the key here. And that leads me really nicely on to the next item, which is supportive partnerships. We have great partners, really good partners, and you've heard some of them mentioned in the course of the discussion of the review, from Linley Hall to Stretton Wetlands Interest Group, from the AONB, Shropshire Wildlife Trust to the National Trust in National England, the Stepping Stones Project, all of these big organizations. But it's not just that, it's the smaller organizations, local producers on the hub, Marches Grow Local. All these individual organizations have contributed to the work that you've heard about tonight. There are too many to mention by name. And I think that indicates something about the strength of the Land Trust. We seem to fit in the gap between these groups. And so what do we want to do about this? We want to strengthen these partnerships. We want to bring added value to them so that we can all achieve more with much less. And that really seems to me to be a crucial element, again, in our that needs to find expression in our business plan. And finally, the hub. Lizzie's talked about the hub. It's made a great start, linking producers to consumers, sharing information, opening up possibilities of shared action. And that is where we need to buttress it. We need to grow from the hub a communication strategy that reaches people that we have yet to meet, farmers that we haven't met, landowners, young people who want to make a living in the land, on the land, and people who want to invest in community-owned land. A whole variety of people that we need to reach out to. The population of Bishop's Castle, the population of the Middle Marches. We need to be there talking to them about the issues that matter to them and to us. But above all, finally, I do strongly believe that we've learnt and we need to make sure that we keep our ear to the ground. We need to ensure that we really are light on our feet, ready to act in response to opportunities that you tell us about or that we hear about. That lies at the heart of a light, simple, swift organization that is rooted in the local community. We really do need that to work. So that's the past, if you like, and to an extent the present. What we now do finally is to hand over to Richard, who will take us into the future. Over to you, Richard.
Okay, thanks, Oliver. Well, what I'm really going to say, I think, is really summarising some of the key points that have arisen during the meeting so far, really. So looking forward, we're hopefully after tonight we're going to have a new elected board, and that's going to help greatly in producing proper governance arrangements and producing a business plan during the coming year. We look forward to re-establishing real contact with our members through events, training and conferences, as Oliver's just been saying. We need to do more to develop working relationships with other organisations such as statutory agencies and strategic partners. Again, as Oliver said, we have, you know, pretty good links already, but we haven't yet had the time to sit down with quite a lot of these partners and explain what we're about, what our objectives are, and how we hope we can work together with them. The other major task will be assessing the condition and management requirements of the new reserves. And an important part of this will be producing management plans and establishing voluntary groups to carry out the work. That hasn't really been mentioned thus far, but that's certainly one of our key aims. In other words, involving members and the wider community and actually getting onto some of these reserves, enjoying them and carrying out the management there. You know, the money may be important, but the time that members spend on these sites, enjoying them, protecting them, helping manage them and so on, is a lot of what we're really actually about. And we want to develop some new projects. We've already heard about from Lizzie about Marches Grow Local and working with Linley Estate, and we've spent a fair bit of time thinking about developing a project with the Hurst and developing a virtual and physical hub there with a focus on using the arts and writing to communicate about our environment and place. It's a smashing centre, the Hurst there, a residential accommodation there as well. And they've got, you know, quite a bit of land and facilities. And we could do a lot there, but obviously the COVID situation has really, the difficulties they've had running courses has precluded that. But I think integrating what we do in with the arts is a brilliant way of getting our message across to a lot more people than we would reach just by carrying out management on reserves, for example. It's a really good way of reaching out, and you know, that's something that we're keen to do. So that's some of the key points we hope to take forward the rest of this year.
Thanks, Richard. That's really good. Now we have a pause. I wonder whether there are any questions that you would like to ask about the rest of the annual report, having got through from the purchasing element. Any other questions that flow from what you've heard?
It's just, I wanted to pick up that Janet posted in the chat about thinking about partners in different terms. Did you want to come in with that, Janet?
Oh, yeah. Oh, hi, everybody. Yeah, I was just thinking that it might be useful to spend some time thinking in terms of what different partners can do for the organisation. So we've talked, people have talked a lot about practical partners, but nobody's talked about political partners. So maybe that's something we could think about at some point in the future.
Yeah. Yes, maybe.
We want doors to be opened, don't we? So starting with the local authority, for example, getting people, you know, councillors on board and so on.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that would seem to me to be one partner that we might want to get involved in. I think, yeah, we've got a lot of people to talk to.
And just someone else, I wanted to bring in Simon Cooter. So you did ask a question right at the beginning, which I haven't forgotten about. I was just waiting until we got to the board bit. But Simon asked, have you got all the trustee and board skills that were required? And there's also another comment. So if you want to come in, Simon, and sorry, I've asked them already, but you would like to unmute.
Yeah, it was just that really was, you'd obviously put out a list of the trustees and board members you wanted, and their various skills. I just wondered whether you'd been successful in getting the range that you'd wanted, or whether there were any gaps.
Simon, yes. I think that we would say that we haven't got all the skills that we need. there were, I think, 6 that we identified, weren't there? But I think what we're going to do once the first board meeting is look at the skills that we have got, some of which might not have been mentioned in people's CVs and so on, and do a skills analysis and identify how we resolve the gaps that emerge from that.
Yeah, the other thing I was just going to say was I think the annual report shows a really amazing first year, I think, for the organisation, but just needs some consolidation, as has been mentioned, I think, with the finances and things like that, just to make sure that going forward that we're in a strong position.
Yeah, I think you're right there.
Oliver, subject to the full skills analysis taking place, and I fully accept that needs to happen, are there feelings about areas which are thin at the moment?
Sorry, can you say that again?
Okay, well, you mentioned the skills analysis when the board is appointed is going to take place, and I fully accept that's an excellent idea. But are there any preliminary areas? I mean, you've obviously talked to the prospective board members, but are there any gaps that have been identified so far where additional skills are required?
I think that one of the key ones is in sophisticated financial management. Really, I think that's a key element that we don't have within the board members. But we, again, it's quite possible that we might be able to draw that in another way. We'll see.
We have another question from Charlie Bell. Charlie, would you like to unmute and ask your question?
Yeah, thanks, Lizzie. Yeah, it's just really interesting to hear about the land at Nind being leased rather than being a land purchase. I mean, given the urgency of the need to protect wildlife and habitat, is leasing rather than buying likely to be a key approach the Land Trust will take in the future, do you think?
Can I come back on that? I mean, it's probably got a role to play. I mean, it's one tool in the toolbox, if you like, and that's why we're using it at Nind. You know, certainly where you've got large estates at play, and they're not likely to want to sell land. You know, it's a way of getting involvement and so on. But you know, as a conservationist of quite a few years, there's only really one way to look after land, and that's to own it. And then you can, you know, carry out the management that you want to carry out on that land. So I think it, you know, as I say, it's a tool in the toolbox, and it's something to consider, but it has limitations as well.
I think one of the advantages of it might be the fact that many farmers have parcels of land which they find difficult to farm, and which themselves might be opportunities for us to manage in a small way. And I think that might be one of the elements of a conversation that we need to have with farmers in the project area. But I broadly, I agree with Richard that this is one element of the tool of the approach that we have.
Thanks.
I can see Simon's got his hand up. Simon, would you like to come in?
Another thought is the idea of covenants on land.
Yes.
So there may be people who would be willing to put covenants on land, which would then maybe bring the land later on, once they've finished, once they've passed on or whatever, that moves it into the trust ownership. I just wonder whether that was a possibility.
Yeah, I mean, I think we haven't considered it, Simon, but it's certainly something that we should consider. And given the age of some of the farmers around here, that might be something that we might consider. We might be successful with. I don't know.
There's a comment from Aideen in the chat. I just wondered if you wanted to share that, if you want to unmute and come in with that comment.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, not much more to say than just what I've said, but leasing could be quite important. I know there's a risk that you might lose it, but there's also the chance that other people see how well the land has been managed and then offer more to you, and you avoid the potential problems of getting into debt by putting huge amount of expense into buying land.
Yeah.
Greg Judy is one of the well-known holistic grazers in the States. But I don't control any land, and this joining the group is a nice way actually of becoming like a virtual landowner. And I'm very, very interested in what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Lizzie, are there any other questions?
Nothing else in the chat. If anyone wants to raise a hand with any other comments or questions at this point. Simon?
Sorry, I just wonder whether there are any other land trusts that you've been in touch with to see how they approach things or anything. Maybe with the first, I don't know.
Jonathan?
We haven't been in touch with them, but amazingly, north of the border in Scotland, there are over 100 land trusts. I wish I had the stats to share with you, but basically the amount of land held in trust by local groups in Scotland is huge. So I think that's a good idea. We could look north of the border and actually discuss some of these issues about covenants on land or leasing land to see what they get out of it, maybe the pros and cons.
Just as a matter of interest, we are a member of the national organisation that connects land trusts, and they were certainly very helpful in the early stages of setting us up. I think Jonathan's right. We need to explore things much more widely than we've been able to. Okay, I think. Am I right, Lizzie? Does that complete the questions and comments on the annual review?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, we now go on to our next item on the agenda. Jonathan will talk through the accounts and our financial statement.
Okay, thank you. I can hear a moving in the background. Anyway, yes, okay. Well, you've hopefully seen the very simple accounts put up on the website to the end of the financial year, 30th of March 2020. But obviously a lot has happened since then. Picking up on people's wish earlier in the meeting for more information, I will put up, because we have prepared it, a simple update of expenditure and income to the end of November, but I thought to keep things simple, I would just give you 4 bullet points for the moment. And I would stress that, this is a very early days organisation. We've only reacted to events in the last 18 months. And I think you've seen from the discussion or the presentation so far that Middlemarches has a bright coat of many colours in terms of what it's doing, but in terms of its financial model to date, it has been a very simple model, and I acknowledge fully that this is going to change radically in the next phase when we start getting money from people like Natural England, when we start having to sort out negotiations with the payments agency. But up to now, it's simply been a model, or a vehicle rather, for taking in people's gifts and donations. So as you can see on the screen in front of you, excluding the Natural England grant that came in after the end of November, so far all of our money has come from the generosity of our supporters in terms of donations and shares. And the first appeal we launched for Cudwell Meadow, as you can see there, exceeded the purchase price by several £1,000s in 3 months. And I would say that the most interesting aspect of that was that virtually all the money came from the town of Church Stretton and its immediate surroundings. So that stresses to me that when there's a strong link between people and place, that there's a strong motivation to try and acquire land to be held in perpetuity for nature. The third bullet point, I think as has been made clear really, that the opportunity to buy Norbury Hill had to be, it was a decision that had to be taken quickly. So basically, by being fleet of foot, we got in there, but the downside is there's a lot of backroom stuff that has to be done to justify and firm that up. But I still think that the total you can see there is impressive. The appeal for Norbury Hill so far has raised, getting on for 37,000. In the next couple of weeks, Lizzie and I will be doing the gift aid claim for that, which I think should easily push that into the low £40,000, which is another expression of people's wish to use their money to good effect for nature. And the last bullet point I would refer to is that thus far it has been a totally voluntary effort. So you can see that we are running so far a very lean machine with very low running costs of £3,873. I took on this job of looking after the money simply because I was the one who opened the bank account. And one of the things that's going to happen, or has to happen, with the election of a new board is a formal office of treasurer, because that hasn't been formally done up to now. And so I expect the person who we get, or who is able to take on the role of treasurer, will have a big role to play in meeting some of the criticisms and the discussions we've had earlier in the evening. But I think other than that, I think the figures that I've shown you on there speak for themselves. And I would just tell you that as of yesterday, the bank balance with Triodos Bank, we have £45,209 in the account, and no one to pay, no bills coming in or due to pay.
Thanks, Jonathan. Lizzie, are there any questions of Jonathan at all?
We haven't had anything in the chat, but if anyone would like to raise their hand or make a comment now or a question. Sorry, Mike, is that your hand up? Sorry, yes, please unmute. I think Mike might have frozen.
No.
Okay, no, then can we move on.
Right, okay. So without more ado then, I'd like to move on to item 6 on your agenda, which is the election of the board. And at this point, I would like to hand the proceedings over to Lizzie, who will take this item in full. Over to you, Lizzie.
Okay, thank you. So we have 9 proposed members for the board. Their statements have been on the website and they were also included in a link that was sent out earlier today. I'm going to read out the names of those who are standing for election in alphabetical order. And when I say your name, if you could please give us a wave so people know who you are. And the only person we don't have with us this evening, unfortunately, is Tim Salmon. So we have Sarah Braun, Jonathan Brown.
Hi.
Janet Cobb, Oliver Good, Richard Keemer, Rob Rowe, Tim Salmon, who's not with us, Richard Small, might be on a different page, and Rosie Wood. Great. So thank you very much to all of you for submitting a statement and for your interest in joining the Middlemarches Community Land Trust first official board. The Constitution says that the board must be no more than 12 members, and the proposed board members are ones that have been put forward by the interim steering committee. So I would like to propose that we elect these 9 members to the board en bloc. And please may I remind you that it's only shareholder members who are able to vote at this time. So please could I have a proposer?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
Thank you, Simon. And could I have a seconder?
I'll do that.
Thanks very much, Steve. Can I ask if anyone is abstaining from the vote, please? No. Is anyone against the vote? And all in favour? Okay, thank you very much, and a very warm welcome to the board.
Well, that was short and sweet. I was expecting something slightly more than that, but that's brilliant. Thank you very much, Lizzie. Thank you very much, everybody, and thank you for the confidence that you've shown in the board tonight.
Oliver, it's William. I have just a quick question, and congratulations to the board for either continuing in office or being elected for new office. Could I ask, please, that within, let's say, 3 months, that the duties and the principal responsibilities in the 6 areas and who's going to fulfil those are communicated to the members, so that we know going forward who is going to be the treasurer, who is going to be responsible for communications, whatever it may be.
I think I can say with confidence that that my fellow board members would probably agree with that in the light of the debate and discussions that we've had tonight. So I think we can certainly see that as being among our first tasks. But most important of that, of course, is the development of the business plan.
Well, okay, it's not an either or, though, is it?
No, absolutely not.
In a previous conversation that you and I have had, one suggestion I made was that the website has a members only section. And I think that would be very appropriate as and when information of financials and plans and whatever are developed, so that there can be easy communication via the website with the with members. Now, people like treasurers and what have you, actual positions that our organisation needs to have, will obviously be posted for general availability, but there will be confidential matters, and I would absolutely recommend that whoever deals with communications investigates having a look at creating a members only button, and every member is given an identity, whether it's a share number or whatever it may be, to access that confidential sector of the website.
I'm sure that that's something that we will consider in our early meetings. Yes. Thank you for that suggestion, William. Okay. So that leaves us with one item remaining on our agenda, item 7. Are there any other items of business that anyone would like to raise? Aideen, do you want to unmute and ask your question?
Hi, just suggesting that a newsletter is a simpler way of getting information to a group of members.
I think that's certainly that's something that that we try to do up to date, and that's something that we would want to do on a regular basis in either online or on paper. But certainly I agree with you, and I think all the other board members would feel the same way. Thank you for that.
I just have I think hopefully a final comment, Oliver, and that is how the trust will actually be run. So is there going to be a finance committee? Is there going to be an executive committee? Is there going to be a lands management committee? Is there going to be a conservation committee? Or are you all going to do everything?
I think that's something that I can't give you a decision on tonight, but I know that other members of the interim board would feel very strongly that some system like that would be very helpful. I think it's something that the board will consider at its first meeting.
Rosie's got her hand up. Rosie, would you like to come in?
Hi, thank you very much for inviting and accepting me onto the board. Oliver, as a prospective board member, new board member, I think my answer would be the decisions around who does what will follow on from our skills audit that you've already talked about, and be a conversation based on skills and aptitude. For example, I'm the last person you should send out to measure up for fencing. Absolutely the last person. Please don't give me that sort of job to do. But there will be people on the board as well as members who have those very, very solid hands-on practical skills that we will need repeatedly through the project. So I would expect us to break into working groups based on the need of the organisation, the skills that we come equipped with, and the aptitudes that we have. And I would also suggest that part of our skills audit will also include a training needs audit, because nobody knows everything all at the same time.
Thank you, Rosie. That's very helpful. Yeah, I'd go along with that. Right, are there any other items of other business?
Sorry, I think, Simon, have you got your hand up?
Yeah, just one thing was that, I mean, you're all aware of the Stepping Stones project, which is about linking the landscape between the Longmynd and the Stiper Stones, and the Middle Marches Community Land Trust sort of fits into that mould very well in delivering some of that. I just wonder whether there could be closer relationship with that group, which is headed up by National Trust. At the moment, it includes the OMB and the Wildlife Trust and Natural England, but it could include the Marches group as well. So I wonder whether you get more involved with that as time goes on.
We'd love to be invited, I think, is the thing, Simon. I think we would really help. And yes, definitely. I think that would be a key. That would be one of the key partners, definitely.
Rob, did you want to come in with anything there as well?
Just echoing what Oliver's just said, really. Yeah, the more communication, the better. And it's not just those kind of official bodies either. There are several landowners around who are buying land with the idea of rewilding and sympathetic regenerative agriculture. And it's really important that we're all talking to one another.
Could I just bring in Charlie as well on this point?
Yeah, just to make the point, obviously, as a Stepping Stones project officer, I would love to work more closely with you all. So, yeah, let's do it.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Thank you, Charlie. Yes, definitely. Let's do that. I think that's a really good point at which to draw the meeting to a close. First thing to say, can I, on behalf of all your members, thank the members of the interim board for the work that they've done over the 2 years to keep this ship afloat. up to the point where we are today, and it would be invidious to single out people in that regard, but because I know how hard everybody has worked. Another person to thank, of course, is Lizzie, and the huge amount of work she's done over the 2 years, and particularly keeping the hub going, helping set up the Marches Grow Local consultation and so on. Really, really well. But we also need to remember the partners that we have around us, who have supported us and helped us get to the point where we are today. They have been absolutely vital in helping us get to where we are. So thank them too. But finally, and really, really, most importantly, we thank you, our members, because you have got us, pulled us over the finishing line with a great big rope. And so thank you very, very much. Particularly thank you to all the people who asked questions tonight, really useful questions, which have highlighted important issues that we need to get right for the coming years. So if we had a glass, let's raise it to Middle Marches Community Land Trust, and here's to Community Land Trust for the next 12 months, and here's to you in your support for it. Thank you very much for your work this evening, and a very, very good night to you all. Thank you.